The sleeper has awoke. The Twins, who spent most of the winter hibernating in a cave with TC Bear, have made another major league free agent buy. Find out about Harrison Bader after getting yourself locked on Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Locked On Twins, your daily go-to source for the top Minnesota Twins insight, discourse, and analysis. Personally, it's my favorite show of the Locked On Podcast Network, which, by the way, brings you your team every day. I lost my place, but I'm back. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe where applicable. I'm Dave Brown, an MLB writer for too long, a BBWAA member for over a decade, and a Baseball Hall of Fame voter who is currently based in the Midwest. I remind you, by the way, there's no smoking in the Metrodome, but there is a giant gallon of milk if you'd like to partake. Across the Great Plains and cyberspace, we also have Brandon Warren, a longtime Twins writer and an even longer time Twins fan who knows how to ask the really tough questions of players like Lance Lynn. Today's show will be a lot like yesterday's because we have another Twins free agent signing, and we're not even talking about a non-roster invitee for spring training. Nobody like that. One day after bringing in left-hander Daniel Klum, word has come that the Twins have agreed with Harrison Bader on a deal. He's an outfielder who can play center field, according to StatCast, and in some seasons even hit the ball a little bit. We'll address what Bader's signing means, and we'll talk more about the Twins' offseason so far and to come, plus other fun topics. Before we get into the details, we want to let you know that today's episode of Locked On Twins is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. That's all you need to do. And you also have to ask yourself, what time is it?
Game time.
It's also 9:06 a.m.
Yes.
So not even 10 minutes into the after we recorded the Danny Klum episode yesterday, the Twins felt motivated to add another free agent. And that free agent was Harrison Bader.
I did this, by the way. I did
You did it. You wished it into reality.
Yeah. No, I tweeted a power ranking, and he was number one, and then wasn't it Grichuk, and then Laureano, and then Duvall, and then my top one was Bader, and it happened. And then you tweeted me, and I got a message saying you did this at Brandon Warren, and I had no context because I was in the jewelry store, so I didn't know what was going on. It was kind of funny, actually.
Wasn't it? I thought it was a reply. Was it a reply tweet to the signing?
Yes. So I had no idea. I was just tagged, and I'm like, I don't know what I did, and I figured maybe like Dan Vogelbach had signed over in Japan or something, and that I did that. Or, James Corden was going to be the Luka Doncic stand-in for the Luka Doncic made-for-TV movie from Dallas to Los Angeles with Love. I don't know. But really what I thought was I did something other than get Harrison Bader to sign with the Twins.
Well, he's on them now. Here are some basics about the deal. It's a $6.25 million contract with a mutual option for 2026. It includes up to $2 million in additional performance bonuses. So it's not nothing, but it's not terribly expensive.
Well, and I'm sorry to interject here, but Kenny Rosenthal said 625 guaranteed. We've seen with these mutual options where it's $5 million salary, $3 million mutual, or $5 million mutual option, $3 million buyout for Randall Grichuk. You would theoretically call that $8 million guaranteed. So we don't know if this is 4, 5, 6, whatever million for Bader, and then a buyout on next year's option, or we don't know what that looks like exactly. So I'm not super comfortable saying other than 625 guaranteed where that all lines up, but I feel fairly confident that the poll lads are like, that buyout, we're never going to see it having to pay any of that all the way in November if it happens. So make it whatever you want.
Right. Well, the poll ads hopefully will be out of the picture by then because
it's like a reverse signing bonus.
It's an impending sale.
Yeah,
it's an impending sale. Still impending means it's still going on. So that's all there's to do with the news on that. So it's we haven't heard anything other than that. So hopefully the poll ads, like you said, won't have to worry about the rest of this Bader contract for them. Bader baited 236, 284, 373, slugging with 12 homers, 19 doubles, 17 steals, 95 Ks, and 21 walks, and 437 plate appearances for the Mets. So that computes to a 4.8% walk rate and a 21.7% K rate. He used to walk more in his career for a littler guy, a smaller guy, not a big power guy. Although he did slug over 400 once. I think that was in the COVID season. He slugged 436. So maybe he does or has to worry about getting home run happy, which, a lot of players these days, that's what they go for. But it would be nice if he walked a little bit more. That would be a positive development. Now, StatCast says, he's 10 outs above average on defense in center field, and that ranks 9th or 10th in the league. So pretty good, a positive sign. He's not Pete Crow Armstrong. He's just Harrison Bader, no hyphen. So it appears that he can play center field. Now, his numbers on Fielding Bible, I usually go to Fielding Bible first. I'm different. I go right to my Bible. And they had him at a -2 in the outfield. Now, I don't know why that is. There's such a big differential there. There usually isn't. Sometimes you'll see differences in the defensive metrics depending on what site you go to. But that's really alarming, kind of going from a 10 on the one side to a -2. So I guess the Twins, they pay attention to StatCast. That's what they look at. So now he doesn't have much of an arm. He also was 0 for 10 as a pinch hitter.
StatCast loves his arm.
I thought he was like a positive one on the arm. What was it say?
Arm strength, I'm talking about.
Yeah, infield, outfield, arm. He gets a 1, and like Pete Crow Armstrong gets a 4. Let me see. Where does this rank?
I'm making sure that I wasn't looking at the wrong place. Yeah, arm strength, 86th. Arm value, 70th percentile. I'm seeing a 90.1 average throwing.
Right.
So
well, we're looking at two different places.
Well, that's again. But here's the deal: if they believe his arm is that, he can play right field, which is nice.
He can play right field. Now, this I was kind of I wasn't joking, but I was making a kind of a flippant comparison. This reminds me of another attempt at Manuel Margot, a guy who's not really offensive first, but a guy who could. They thought maybe could play defense and run a little bit and maybe attempt to pinch hit. I don't know. He just seems like he's that kind of guy. He's a right-handed component to the outfield. He's a guy who you can if Buxton is out for an extended period, and I think that's part of the thinking, you can go play him for 2 weeks. You can play him for a month in center field. You can play him for all season if it comes to that.
Yeah, I mean, he played 143 games last year.
Right, but he didn't hit very well. And
no, but he's capable. Like
he's capable. Yeah, in an emergency, he can spell Buxton for whatever time. And even if Buxton plays 100 games, you can start him for 62 in center field and feel comfortable about his defense if you just listen to StatCast.
Which is nothing to say of if they just put Emmanuel Rodriguez in there too. So I mean, there are layers to this.
Yeah, there's lots of layers. So. I still wonder if Randall Grichuk would have been a better fit from an offensive standpoint. Although Randall's not a guy that you want to put in center field for 60 games. So that's kind of why that wouldn't work. But again, you mentioned Emmanuel Rodriguez, and I feel like maybe this wasn't the best. My initial take is I'm very lukewarm about it. And I think maybe there were better players available. Maybe they would have cost a little bit more money, but I'm not all that excited about this move.
So I'm going to invoke a different name before we head to break. He reminds me a little of like what the Twins are trying to do with Michael A. Taylor. Now, what he doesn't do that Michael A. Taylor does is strike out. And so he pays for it a little bit on the walks. But Michael A. Taylor's not a guy who is going to walk an obscene amount, not even league average. And he fell off the cliff last year with the Pirates and is, I believe, still looking for work. And so he, though, will give you pop, speed. He can hit lefties. I think he's got a career like 786 OPS against them, Not a lot of OBP, but some slugging percentage. This last year, yeah, it wasn't great, but I think it still came out to like an 85 weighted runs created plus, and I think Michael A. Taylor gave the Twins like a 90. So it's in that vicinity. You're just hoping this time, though, that instead of playing this version of a player in center 100 and some games, you can mix and match between center, some corners against lefties, and that sort of thing. And you look at Bader as a prospect and as a young player, like this was a very exciting young player. If you can tap into some of that, I know he's in his age 31 season coming up here. It's not like he's got a lot of untapped potential left, but it's not as though they went crazy low ceiling either. They did go with a good athlete who will give them theoretically things they need based on the current roster's construction. Now, the biggest thing with these platoon types that falls apart with the Twins is if your starters don't stay healthy, you're forced to play platoon guys too much in bad spots. And you add Manuel Margot's struggles pinch hitting with playing too much against righties, and that's how you get what happened last year.
Bader, I think he struggled for some reason. You mentioned his career against lefties is good. He struggled against them last year. I'm just gonna write that off as a one-off.
It was a drop, and then I think it was really good against them with the Yankees the year before, which is, we've talked about Jose Miranda against righties too, and like what's that all about? He didn't hit lefties at all, but he had handled righties well. Hopefully, 1 year anomalies. Although if Miranda has to choose between hitting righties and lefties, I'd say righties just because you face more of them. But it'll be interesting to see because, and I found a clip included in my latest Puckett's Pond piece. Well, that's a lot of piece. Him homering off Danny Coulomb, and the list of guys who have homered off him. I'll find it later if we're interested, but it's a funny list that includes Harrison Bader. But he has hit
and Jose Abreu.
And Jose Abreu. Connor Wong and Connor Joe, and it was 7 home runs by 7 right-handed hitters, and it was the most hilarious list you could imagine.
And one more thing about Bader, Brandon, things I should have asked you before. This is a 2-break show or a 1-break show?
This is a 2-break show, so we're going to go into one and then go to another.
All right, we'll talk about more Harrison Bader, a few more details after we take this commercial break. How about that?
That sounds good. Well, I know that I love going to NFL playoff games. Dave, you ever been to a playoff game?
I have. I remember a Chiefs playoff game that I covered for Newsday, I want to say. They were playing the Jets.
Yeah. Well, you mean the Jets were good, so it probably wasn't recently. No, I'm just kidding. No. But going to a game, whether you're as a fan or a media type, is it's an unexplainable, unforgettable experience. And Gametime wants to help you get there. I did go to a Vikings and Eagles game, and it was a bloodbath. And Tavares Jackson got power bombed into the end zone as I think was maybe Asante Samuel ran back a pick or one of their great corners. It was an ugly day at the old ball yard, the Metrodome. And at the same time, too, though, I still remember it vividly because I had such a great experience. And Gametime wants to help you get into those experiences as well. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks, which makes getting tickets for events even easier than it was before. It filters out all the fluff and only shows you incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I personally love the panoramic seat views. I love knowing the all-in price. I toggle that button and it says, I'm paying $40 to get in. And at the end of the transaction, boom, $40. I'm not getting a bait and switch like those other guys where they're telling me it's $40 and it's going to be $65 after I pay some fees that are convenient to everyone else but me. Also, the on-time ticket delivery and lowest price guarantee gave me crazy peace of mind. If you find the same ticket in the same row elsewhere cheaper, Gametime will take care of you and give you 110% of the difference to boot. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. But again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDONMLB, all one word. You'll get $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Lockdown Twins is back.
I interrupted. Yes. I have that list though. These are the following players who've homered off Danny Coulomb in the last 2 years. Harrison Bader, Tyler Nevin, Kevin Pillar, Jose Abreu, Danny Mendick, Connor Wong, and Connor Joe. Like, is that not the funniest list you've ever heard?
Where did you come from, Connor Joe? Connor Wong and Connor Joe and John
Tyler
Connor
Nevin?
and Sarah Connor in the phone book. And
Yeah.
that is a strange list for sure. We were talking before about the Twins getting Harrison Bader, and you mentioned that when he was coming up, he showed some promise that it has somewhat been delivered upon as a player and somewhat kind of missed. In his first 3 full seasons, this is not counting the COVID year, he did post a WRC plus. So that's basically that kind of all-in statistic that Fangraphs uses to measure how effective a player is on offense at the plate. And he was over 100. He was better than average. He did 7% better, 14%, and 8% better as recently as 2021. So this is now 4 years ago now that he's done that. So I think this is definitely a high floor kind of a signing, like we said before, where he can go and get the ball in center field or possibly right or left. And Dan Hayes kind of fitted in as the guy who's sort of replacing Max Kepler in terms of like what you're paying him. So he sort of fits into that Kepler salary slot. Maybe that's how Falvey, great acquisition, Falvey, persuaded the Polads to do it. He's like, well, we're not really, this is not a greater expenditure. This is just, this is Max Kepler's money that we don't have to pay him anymore. This is where it's going. So, so Bader is in the outfield. Grichuk is not. They didn't sign Tommy Pham either, who's 37. There are a couple other things about Bader that bother me a little bit. The discrepancy on the defensive rankings bothers me a little bit, and also his sprint speed at Statcast dropped a couple dozen percentiles in one season. Went from the 90s, I think, into like the mid 70s. So last year he was not as fast as he was, and guys turn 30 and that kind of thing happens. So I just hope that the things that the Twins think he can do well, he still does well at least. And then if he hits better than league average, it's a bonus.
The one thing I like too is that the things he does well are things that Rocco is not afraid to use late in games, whether it's defense, base running. Again, not as fast as he used to be, but he did swipe some bags. So, I mean, there's at least the willingness. Willie Castro went from, one level to, a fairly big drop as far as that. But the willingness is certainly the willingness to steal bases is something, because, if you need a run late and you've got a situation that calls for it, or a catcher behind the plate that, Yasmani Grandal throws out 9% of runners or whatever, and you get a chance to exploit that. That's all part of the deal that Rocco has shown to be willing to push those buttons. And in fact, maybe push them more than some of the old heads are happy to see or willing or wanting to see, which is funny because the things they want to see are hit and run and all that stuff, which are also, guess what, pushing buttons. But so late inning defense. And if Buxton stays in the game and is in there in the ninth inning for defense, you're putting him out there in left or right to replace an inferior defender. There's no way of knowing how he'll take to a corner. And obviously the right field corner at Target Field is a little tougher. Max Kepler needed some time to figure that out, and then he became just tremendous at it. But if he's a good defensive center fielder, like if we think he's even just fine out there and he moves to a corner and he's really, really good, again, another benefit to the Twins, who have not been all that ground ball heavy when they're building their staffs lately either. So I don't know. I mean, I think there's small incremental things that could really be helpful. Now, I've thought that about Kyle Farmer and Donovan Solano and a bunch of other guys, and I've been proven completely wrong because the numbers and what happened didn't match up. So I'm just babbling.
No, it's I think a key to making all this work, there's a couple keys. I think they get the best out of the Bader signing if good things happen to two different players. If Buxton stays healthy like he did most of last season, maybe even a little bit more, that's good. And if Matt Wallner can not be horrendous against left-handed pitching, I think you can leave him in right field late in the game. He's got a good arm too, and he's shown capable defensive abilities in the outfield. If Matt can be 150 game, 600 plate appearance guy, which we haven't seen yet, but if he can do that,
you got to have a lot of lefties in there, by the way. So he's going to have to show that to get to that plate appearance total.
He has before. He hasn't always.
I'm
consistently. He's not. That's not a guy who has always not hit lefties.
I'm just telling the listeners, I'm telling the listeners that if he gets to 600 plate appearances, it probably means he has turned a corner against lefties to where he's got Rocco's trust. So this is a very good thing, is all I'm trying to emphasize. Get to 600 plate appearances is tough, but if he does that, you've got a really nice right fielder there.
The Bader signing doesn't do really anything for first base. I think, are they still relying on Jose Miranda, or if that doesn't work? So, Miranda ended last season not hitting well. He did have a back injury at some point, right after his super hot streak, and was never, I don't know, at least coincided with him not hitting at all after that, certainly for power. Miranda's going to be another guy that, if you have, they didn't sign, they weren't going to sign Pete Alonso, but, there's also people like Taylor Ward out there. Mm-hmm. If you have that at home already in Miranda, if they believe that he's healed up and can at least hit well enough to play first base, then that is, it makes the Bader signing make even a little bit more sense, because they don't have to go out and put any money into any other first base types if they think Miranda is going to be for most of the games the guy at first base. I don't know. That makes me nervous too, and we're still waiting on to see what kind of Royce Lewis we're going to get. Maybe Miranda has to go back and play third, and we got Willie Castro in the mix as well. But we know what happens when Willie Castro plays too much. We saw it last year. He went from an all-star in midseason to not much in the second half. So the Twins have depth, but sometimes you wonder if they're relying on it too much. And I still would feel better, or would have felt better, if they had added another a first base type. I'm worried that the Carlos Santana's presence is mostly on defense is going to be missed at first base.
Yeah, two things I want to reiterate quick before we head into our final break. It stinks that we're not talking about Alex Kirilloff in this conversation still. And then Miranda, I saw a table that said he had the second largest OPS fall off first half to second half. There's 345 points of a gap. So he's too good of a player for that to be a thing. It's just a matter of being healthy. And again, it's easy for me to just say that and wave my wand and have him be healthy. But I also believe the version that we saw of him in the first half is a lot closer to what he's capable of.
Let's take our second and final break, and we'll come back and wrap this up with topics beyond the Harrison Bader signing.
The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with PrizePicks, the best place for DFS. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, PrizePicks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You pick more than or less than on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. PrizePicks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes needs to throw for 1 yard to win. That's just 3 feet if you're not into the metric system, but 1 yard. Pair that with one more correct pick and you're cashing out. This week, I'm definitely loving that, and I'm loving the more board for Travis Kelce on receiving yards. And you know what else I love most? The fast, safe withdrawals. When I win, my cash can be in my account in as few as 15 minutes. Check out the promos tab, and you can tail any of the Super Bowl Sweet Millie winners big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes 3-4-3, you can win a split of $1 million in promotional funds. That sounds pretty great to me, Dave. Download the app today.
Did you just say that the yards were a metric system?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
Are they not?
No.
That's meters. That's meters.
That's America. Yeah. That's America, baby. Anyway, back to
Yeah. Nevertheless, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB. You'll get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. Run your game.
Locked On Twins is back, and we want to remind you that you can find us on social media. You see our little handles there at the bottom. That's how you pick me up on my handle. I'm at Answer Dave Brown on Twitter, and I'm at Answer Dave on Blue Sky. And Brandon is at Brandon_Warren on Twitter, and then at Warren.Beesky.social.
It's Brewski, I think. I think it's technically Brewski.
Let's have a brewski. That actually sounds like a good marketing.
I was just talking to one of my Brewers friends a minute ago, so yeah. Hi, Andrew Wagner.
You hang around with those people, huh? That's interesting.
It's beggars can't be choosers.
So so find us there on social media. You can do that after the show or right now. I mean, we're not going to be on social media. We're doing this right now. So it's kind of like, are we here? Are we there? We're here. We're not
the duality of man.
It is. There's at least two of them. So a couple other issues in Major League Baseball this week. On Monday, I think it was, MLB announced that umpire Pat Hoberg had been fired for associating too closely, I guess, with a gambling friend of his. They shared a gambling account, and I wasn't sure exactly why someone would do that. But then I reminded myself after reading the story, Hoberg lived in Iowa. And sometimes gambling is legal in a state, and sometimes it's not. So Hoberg had this friend who was like a poker player and also a gambler who bet sometimes on baseball, sometimes on events that Hoberg was involved in. And they kind of shared an account. And that's my, I don't know if it's a rationalization or an explanation.
But Iowa is a sports betting, because I know people who drive down to Iowa to bet on sports. There's a casino across the border called Diamond Joe's, very well known, and people from the Twin Cities will drive down there on a Sunday to bet on sports. It's wild.
So Hoberg is into poker, and this friend of his was into poker and into betting on baseball, and Major League Baseball found out about it. And he also covered up some evidence by deleting some text they were looking for. Gambling in baseball is a nuanced thing. This conversation is not going to lead to us saying that Pete Rose should be installed into the Hall of Fame or anything.
Absolutely
like that. Not. Although that's where some people go with it. But it's still it is a criticism of Major League Baseball to say, well, if you want to have gambling be a part of the advertising sphere and the marketing sphere, that stuff like this is going to happen. And Hoberg is not just some umpire. He's one of the highest rated ball and strike umpires in the league the past few years. He even had, according to one site, I saw a perfect game of calling balls and strikes. And we know how people like to complain about that kind of stuff. So baseball's association with gambling sites has kind of claimed its first. This is kind of a negative thing that's happened. A casualty, yeah. And I did read that Hoberg can apply for reinstatement next year. So it could be that this is a penalty that lasts a year or whatever. I think it was the right thing for Manfred to do, but I also think that when baseball went from a standpoint of we don't want anything to do with gambling because of the things that had happened in its history, from the White Sox to Pete Rose and before and after, and to as long as the players and the umpires realize that you can't bet on baseball, we're going to have this thing. And I think if everybody is an adult, that's not a bad way to handle it. But this is something that's going to happen. The umpires, it's not like the players who make so much money that it would be difficult for them to be leveraged by gamblers anymore. Right. I think that's probably part of MLB's thinking on this. But umpires, not necessarily the case. It's not like that. They don't have Pete Alonso contracts or Harrison Bader contracts. So,
but you also hear about players playing cards and getting heated about $5,000. It's because the competitive nature of these guys. outweighs the monetary value. And a couple things, you had said, and before you said that he could reapply or whatever, I thought, you know what, this feels like a 1 year, hire him back quietly. He's a really good umpire. Fully 100% investigate just to be certain he wasn't betting, and bring him back and have a Josh Hamilton reclamation tour or whatever. And also too, yeah, it's like a pendulum swing. We went from no betting to jumping into bed with it, with absolutely minimal vetting or minimal understanding of what could happen. And yeah, we've just dove into the deep end of the pool. Like, all right, betting's cool now. And that this should be expected. This is the byproduct of not doing enough prep work to make this not happen.
And, I'm not taking blame away from Hoberg on this. It's not just a simple matter of MLB sort of changing the conditions and this is what you get. When he does things like sharing an account with a guy who's going to gamble on baseball, even if it's a friend of his, this is a possibility that it would happen. I mean, Hoberg made this happen for all his good judgment as an umpire. This was certainly bad judgment on his part, and
it's too bad he didn't miss that phone call.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So
I think he comes back quietly. This is also not a payee situation where it was many millions of dollars and actual gambling happening on. It was more a lapse in judgment, which, I mean, look how long they employed some of these umpires who are absolutely terrible on the field. I think MLB will. Now, I won't say come to its senses, because it does need to make an example of him. And that's what I think a year of no baseball for you is going to do. But I do think he's back in a year.
So Pat Hoberg situation, unfortunate, and maybe not the last we've seen of stuff like this with baseball.
Probably
in the
not.
New environment.
Probably not.
Not probably by a long shot. The other thing that's going on, it's not really anything new other than there's been another story about one of the Yankee fans who assaulted basically Mookie Betts in the playoffs last year in the World Series. Austin Capobianco, kind of a woes me, oh, I wish this would go away. So I'm just going to talk to The Athletic about a big story and rehash.
I love Brendan Cootie, but Cootie or Cutie. They're bough funny to say.
Cootie
I love him. I wish he would have gotten to cover Zach Littell with the Yankees. The Yankees traded him, because that would have been the closest I think I've ever seen to a reporter looking like a player they cover. Go check it later after the show. Maybe Lance Lynn and me could be close. I never covered Daniel Vogelbach when he was on a team. However, yeah, I'm not sure if that was the best story or not. I mean, we're in a time of season where there are not a lot of ideas left. You can only write so many best shape of his life stories, and most of those are going to be ready in like 2 weeks when guys are talking to reporters down in Florida. So with that said, I don't feel bad for the guy. He did the FAFO.
Absolutely not. It's and I feel he said he's gotten death threats and other strange packages in the mail and people bothering him, that kind of thing. I mean, those are all of that. I guess my actions are coming back to haunt me. What's the
well? If it isn't, it's like that tweet. Well. If it isn't the consequences of my actions, or the me reaping versus me sowing.
It's and it was funny too, because the first story about him was that really weird, like, hey, this is a great guy. I just had beers with him. That Jesse Rogers did for ESPN, like the night of the game. So the first thing was, the first media response was really positive.
To humanize.
Now this is, and this was kind of like that. This is like, hey, I really regret it, and I know what I did was wrong, which is a different take than he had at the beginning. At first, he was like, I'm just trying to protect my players. And, going to a baseball game, not to dehumanize the players even more, but it's a little like going to the zoo. Don't touch the animals. You're not supposed to do that unless the zookeeper is with you, saying that the bird can land on your arms or the monkey can land on your head.
Or you can touch the porcupine at Underground Water Place in Minneapolis.
Yeah, or
cool.
the manta rays,
Yeah.
ray pool. You can touch them as they swim by. Under certain circumstances, it's fine. But as the guy's trying to catch a foul ball, do not touch it. And it wasn't like they bumped into Mookie either. It was, and it's not just this Austin guy. There was some other guy. They grabbed him. They tried to rip the ball out of his glove. They absolutely should be banned. I don't know about it forever, but certainly for this year. I mean, we talk about Pat Hoberg's penalty. These guys need to be made to stay away for at least this year. And if they show, penitence and contrition, then maybe they can be allowed back in. But they're lucky they weren't arrested for assault. Seriously.
Yeah. Everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, the rich millionaire," blah blah blah. They grabbed like his wrist. Besides, did they not? Yes. I mean, if he jumping for the ball comes down, you could very easily dislocate your wrist, right? And everyone's like, well, that didn't happen. And I'm like, yeah, but a lot of times criminality is based on intent or what could have happened but didn't happen. Like people don't only get punished by the result of what happened. There's also criminality in intent. And regardless of if it was premeditated or not, I mean, I'm really getting into my crime junkie database background here, but they could have been charged with something, and it could have been a lot worse than just don't come back to Yankee Stadium,
So those guys are getting what they deserve, and
these guys can't come back.
I don't understand the story. Like, why is it? I don't understand why the story is a thing. They should stop giving them attention. They should have stopped a long time ago. But that's how I feel about that. That's going to wrap up this episode of Locked On Twins. Hopefully, if you're out there listening or watching and listening, the next time you go to the ballpark, you stay away from the players unless they're like, okay, you can come, you can approach me for an autograph or whatever. Don't run on the field. Don't grab their wrists. Stay away.
I want you to leave them alone.
There you go. That's the last word from Brandon Warren. And I'm Dave Brown, wishing you all a very pleasant good evening, saying we are going to Alexei Casilla tomorrow night. Stay away from Alexei.
Who are the Twins going to sign in 10 minutes?
Yeah, right.